Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining me for this speaker series event about the history of the Alumni Association. I'm Ryan Ross, our Director of History and Traditions Programs, Senior Editor of Illinois Alumni Magazine, and Curator and Collections Manager of the Richmond Family Welcome Gallery at Alice Campbell Alumni Center. Over the next few minutes, I'll give you a brief history of the Alumni Association's first 150 years, touching on the programs and services that have defined the UIAA throughout its history, telling stories about the organization's impact on the university and its alumni, and highlighting the legacies of our executive directors and presidents. We'll have time for questions at the end, so if you have a question during the presentation, please submit it by using the Q&A feature, which is one of the buttons at the bottom of your screen, and I'll get to as many of them as I can at the end. Our story begins on a late spring day in 1873. The university was then only 5 years old, and it was celebrating the commencement of its second ever graduating class on a campus that looked like this: a campus with only 3 university buildings, surrounded by farmland, midway between Champaign and Urbana. A campus where Green Street looked like this, down at the bottom of the photo, an unpaved road with horses and buggies tied up along the fence. A campus where students built boardwalks to circumvent the marshy ground and used a single bridge to cross the Boneyard Creek, which was then an open sewer. And you can see it there in the middle of the photo. We see 2 university buildings in this image. At the top, we have the campus's original building, which was nicknamed the Elephant. That is where the first students lived, dined, studied, had their classes, and attended mandatory church services back when the U of I was known as the Illinois Industrial University. Today, the former site of the Elephant is the location of the Beckman Institute for Advanced Science and Technology and the Electrical and Computer Engineering building. The other campus building you see in this image was the university's first armory, what was known as the Mechanic and Military Hall. That's the building on the right. It's on the current site of the Siebel Center for Computer Science, and it's where the university held its first commencement ceremonies. It is also where the Alumni Association was founded on June 5th, 1873, by the university's first graduating class. That class was the class of 1872. On the day in question, they returned to campus to join in the commencement celebration and to meet for a 1-year reunion. But it was a reunion with a purpose: to create an alumni association, quote, in order to foster a spirit of fraternal feeling and preserve and perpetuate a profound interest in our alma mater, unquote. And that's what the Alumni Association is still doing, finding ways to preserve and perpetuate a profound interest in our alma mater, such as keeping alumni informed about the U of I, acting as their voice in university affairs, and offering programs and services that give them a sense of pride in the institution. And the association does all these things through the aid of a dedicated volunteer alumni board, just as we did in 1873. Those core aspects of the Alumni Association have always remained the same, but what has changed over the past 150 years has been our methods for achieving those goals. In the early years, the Alumni Association was a bare bones enterprise, entirely run by alumni volunteers with no paid professional staff. Its main purpose was to host a literary meeting every year during commencement. These exercises, as they were called, were modeled after the student literary societies of the time, which were the most popular extracurricular activities on campus, far more popular than sports, if you can believe it. Alumni would attend these gatherings to sing, recite poetry, read essays, and deliver orations about academic subjects or social issues. After a few years, the alumni board decided to replace the literary meeting with an event that might appeal to a wider audience, an alumni banquet. The banquet remained a popular annual event for decades, attracting alumni from across the generations to reconnect with old friends, meet new ones, and share their memories of their time on campus. Here's a photo from the 1941 banquet, more than 60 years after the banquet was first held. And I chose this one entirely because of the look on this man's face to the right of the cake, because he really looks like he wants to blow out these candles. While the bulk of the Alumni Association's activities in those early years were centered on campus, our alumni leadership also did a fair amount of work off campus, mostly as advocates for the university's mission and as public relations to communicate its value to the state of Illinois. One of the association's greatest contributions came in 1885 when our volunteer leadership played a major role in changing the Illinois Industrial University's name to the University of Illinois. The institution changed its name to better reflect its evolving curriculum and its aspirations to become a full fledged university that offered courses in every field of knowledge. Alumni advocated for the change by meeting with their state legislators, writing an untold number of letters to the governor, and publishing opinion pieces in newspapers throughout the state. This was one of the first examples of a sort of grassroots advocacy for the university that would become one of the Alumni Association's hallmarks in later decades, with programs that I'll discuss in a few minutes. In the 1920s, the Alumni Association began to use the new media of radio and the movies, producing a weekly broadcast about campus news and funding the creation of newsreels about the university. But before those media were invented, the association promoted the university in the old fashioned way by talking to people face to face. In 1893, the Alumni Association leased a building at the most famous World's Fair in history, the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. There, they created exhibits about ongoing research at the U of I, hosted faculty speakers, and evangelized to visitors from all over the world about the work going on at Illinois. In addition to literary meetings, banquets, and public relations, the Alumni Association was also responsible for organizing class reunions. In 1882, the association created a system of all class reunions that would meet every 10 years. The 1892 reunion attracted more than 500 alumni back to campus, which was a staggering 75% of all the alumni at that time. In 1906, the association retooled its reunion program and began helping individual classes to organize reunions every 5 years. In the decades that followed, class reunions would remain one of the organization's main priorities. Whether it was 1922, when the first graduating class held its 50th reunion, 1929, when the university dedicated the Alma Mater statue, 1967, when the university started its centennial celebration, 1987, with this very 1987 program design, 1997, with its identifiable fashions and its can of Diet 7 Up down there at the bottom left, and on into the year 2000. But even in the early years, the university's alumni wanted more than class reunions. And as the U of I changed and grew, so did the Alumni Association. We adapted to the evolving needs of the university and its graduates and developed programs and services that reflected alumni's interests and the times in which they lived. Over the next few minutes, I'll talk about a few of our other programs and programming themes that have endured over the decades. The Alumni Association really started to come into its own at the turn of the 20th century. Credit for organizing the association as it is today often goes to Franklin William Scott, a 1901 graduate, future head of the U of I's English department, and later the namesake of the university's Scott Hall. Before 1904, the Alumni Association charged annual membership dues of 50 cents, which were used to fund its commencement banquet. At the 1904 banquet, Scott proposed that the association raise annual dues to $1 for the purpose of starting an alumni publication and expanding the organization's programming. A debate broke out, with several prominent alumni arguing against the proposal as being undemocratic, unnecessary, and too expensive. But those in attendance took a vote, and the majority were in favor of increasing the dues. In 1906, Scott became the Alumni Association's part time secretary, for which he was paid $25 a year. And the following year, he founded a publication, the Alumni Quarterly. He would serve as the Alumni Quarterly's editor until 1917 and remain the association's secretary until 1920. It's now been more than a century since we launched our formal membership program, and for many years, it helped to fund the bulk of our programs and services. Over the decades, we've offered a wide variety of perks to attract new members, including advanced football ticket sales, discounted travel opportunities, access to special events, and hundreds of other benefits, a list that continues to evolve as our alumni's interests and needs change from decade to decade. If you're interested in learning more about our current membership benefits, you can access them on our website at uiaa.org/membership. As I mentioned a couple slides back, the association's first publication was called the Alumni Quarterly. After Franklin William Scott resigned as editor in 1917, Carl Stevens succeeded him and would go on to serve the association as editor and later secretary for a quarter of a century. And during this time period, Scott and Stevens were the Alumni Association's only paid employees. Before Stevens began working on the newspaper, it was mostly devoted to serious articles along with some scholarly papers. Stevens transformed the publication by adding human interest stories, personal items, and a healthy dose of whimsy in an effort to both inform and entertain readers about the goings on at the U of I, from campus news and faculty research to sports and anything else that might make alumni feel proud to have gone to the school. His new spin on the publication was very well received, and alumni publications around the country began to copy his style. In 1922, Stevens would change the name of the newspaper to the Illinois Alumni News, and until the late 1980s, it remained the paper of record for alumni. In 1989, under the leadership of Executive Director Lou Lieh, the Alumni Association transformed its publication from a newspaper to a magazine called Illinois Quarterly. In 1997, Illinois Quarterly begat Illinois Alumni, and under that name, we've strived to create an excellent general interest publication, continuing Carl Stevens' legacy from a century ago. And we're proud to say that our work regularly earns recognition from professional organizations such as the Council for Advancement and Support of Education and the Folio Magazine Awards. If you're interested in receiving the print edition of the magazine, please become a member of the Alumni Association. A subscription to our publication is one of the many benefits of membership, just as it was back when it started in 1907. In addition to the magazine, for much of our history, the Alumni Records Program was one of the association's chief responsibilities. Our offices were filled with thousands upon thousands of file folders, stuffed with letters, newspaper clippings, photographs, questionnaires, and other biographical data, all collected with one goal: to keep tabs on the successes, hopes, dreams, and life stories of our alumni. Periodically, we used that data to publish comprehensive alumni directories. The first of these appeared in 1881 and listed the names, occupations, and addresses for all 249 of the university's alumni. Later editions included Franklin William Scott's 1906 version, which was a promotional item used to attract new members. And that had updates in 1916, 18, 21, and 28. And then later, a 2-volume behemoth produced in 1998 for the Alumni Association's 125th anniversary. Over time, the biographical data we used in these directories was computerized, giving the wider university community easier access and the ability to add new information. In the 2010s, the association ended its records program as the university's colleges and departments took on a larger role in alumni record keeping through our shared alumni and donor database. But we remain an active information bureau for all things Illinois and field new questions from alumni about the university and about other alumni every day. For much of the Alumni Association's history, it has supported a vast network of Illini clubs around the world, which give alumni the chance to come together, enjoy cultural programs, sponsor scholarships, and reconnect with others who once called Champaign-Urbana home. The association has sponsored these groups and provided them with organizational support, programming, and special events for more than a century. Today, there are 75 Illini clubs, most of them geographically based. However, there are also more than half a dozen affinity groups that are organized around common interests or cultural identities, such as the Marching Illini's Alumni Band and the Black Alumni Network. Here on the slide, we see members of the Las Vegas Illini Club on the left in 1983, and on the right, the Black Alumni Reunion in the Richmond Family Welcome Gallery at Alice Campbell Alumni Center in 2022. As part of helping with club events, the Alumni Association also has a rich history of sponsoring activities to bring alumni together, such as organizing football and basketball game watches, and has also sponsored events such as the annual Alumni Day at the Illinois State Fair in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Another way we've brought alumni together is through our travel program, which has sent alumni groups to destinations all over the world since 1931. In the 1960s, under the leadership of then Associate Director Lou Lier, the travel program exploded in popularity and became one of the Alumni Association's main revenue generators, not only because of the money we received as part of facilitating the trips, but also because of the relationships our staff built with alumni travelers while serving as tour guides, problem solvers, and energy boosters. On the slide, we have some mementos from alumni Jill and Gay Knappenberger's 1976 trip to Italy, including the cover of their scrapbook, their name badges, the Alumni Association's travel brochure, and a photo of them at the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Today, the travel program continues under the name Explorers, and it remains one of the most popular programs we offer to alumni. One of the Alumni Association's missions is to educate the public about the U of I. And one of the ways we've done that for decades is by creating entertaining and timely programs about faculty research and its impact on the world. In 1973, we started Alumni College, a long running lecture series that initially brought alumni back to campus and later sent all star faculty around the country to meet and educate alumni where they lived, covering topics ranging from astronomy to zoology and everything in between. During the pandemic, we could no longer do events like Alumni College in person, so we started to offer them through Zoom, along with other forms of virtual programming. And as a result of that change, today we do a mix of in person and virtual programming, and we're able to make our programs and services accessible to a wider audience. In addition to Alumni College, we sponsor a U of I history series that covers everything from early student life to sports to the architecture and art of Alkeld Hall. And we have the speaker series, in which faculty and staff address social issues and provide university updates like this one about the history of the Alumni Association. When we're not educating or entertaining alumni, we're trying to help them with their careers. Back in the 1960s, the association started to computerize its alumni records, and with that computerization, they built practical databases that alumni could use to connect with each other. One of those was the Alumni Networking File, a conglomeration of alumni professionals who gave career advice and helped younger alumni find job opportunities. From that starting point, in 1975, the Alumni Association launched its Career Center, a Chicago based effort that thrived for more than 3 decades. It helped alumni with career transitions, provided resume assistance, staged mock interviews, and maintained the Career Line computer program, which allowed Illinois students to network with alumni in their fields of study. The Career Center was eventually named after Lou Lier, shown there on the slide, who served as the Alumni Association's executive director from 1983 to 1998. Today, the association continues this career services tradition with Alumni Link, our social media platform that brings together alumni, students, and friends in one virtual community. If you'd like to sign up for Alumni Link, you can access it on our website under the Connect tab on the main menu. Another of the organization's most enduring programs is our annual awards, which began in 1957 when we created the Alumni Achievement Award to honor recipients' professional and personal accomplishments. Starting in 1960, we began to memorialize those recipients by hanging their portraits in the Illini Union. And today you'll find more than 150 of them decorating the walls. In the decades since, the association has gone on to create awards for distinguished service to the university, Illini comeback guests, constituent leadership, Chicago Illini of the Year, alumni humanitarians, diversity and inclusion, honorary alumni, young alumni, and the Lou Lier Spirit Award, named after our former executive director, who's shown here welcoming one of the 2022 winners, the legendary public address announcer Gene Honda. For many years, these awards were bestowed during commencement week in the spring, and in more recent years, the awards ceremony has been shifted to homecoming week in the fall. In addition to honoring alumni, we also celebrate students with annual traditions like the orange and blue commencement tassels we award to bronze tablet recipients for university honors, the Senior 100 event that honors 100 or so of the university's most talented graduating seniors, and the George Huff Awards that we presented from 1954 until the early 2000s to student athletes who earned a varsity letter and maintained a B average. But for many Illinois students, commencement is not the first time they've interacted with the Alumni Association. Some become involved with the organization as early as freshman year as members of our Student Alumni Ambassadors Program, or SAA. First started in 1932 and revitalized in the 1970s under longtime staffer Bob Lumsden, who's shown there on the right, SAA has had an incredible impact on generations of Illinois students, providing leadership opportunities and a close knit community for thousands of high achieving undergrads. Originally two separate organizations, Student Alumni Ambassadors and the Student Alumni Association, today SAA is one united effort and sponsors such long running programs as the Sights and Sounds Freshman Welcome Night, Senior 100, the I Help Volunteer Day, commencement breakfast at the university president's house, and perhaps most importantly, homecoming. Since 1979, the Alumni Association and SAA have been among homecoming's main organizers, helping to preserve one of the university's most cherished annual traditions and transforming it from a weekend to a week-long event. Along the way, the association has introduced a slew of new traditions that have taken root, including the Homecoming 5K and a campus-wide block eye decorating contest. And I'll talk more about our homecoming efforts later. The last thing I'll cover in this section is one of the Alumni Association's current hallmarks, the Richmond Family Welcome Gallery. The U of I's Interactive Heritage Museum, the Welcome Gallery, opened during Homecoming Week in 2018, following nearly 4 years of work to repurpose part of the Alice Campbell Alumni Center as a new campus welcome center, a place where visitors could learn about the U of I's history and global impact and gain an understanding of how Illinois developed into a world-class university. In 2019, the Welcome Gallery received a national award from the Digital Signage Federation for its use of interactive technology. And indeed, the Welcome Gallery features interactive exhibits on more than 130 topics, covering everything from student life over the decades to world-changing faculty research, campus town bars and restaurants, to Illini sports. The exhibits are rotated over time, and we're always working on new ones, collaborating with alumni, faculty, and staff from each of the university's colleges to find topics as well as media and artifacts to display. If you haven't visited, I encourage you to stop by the next time you come to campus. Or if you have visited, please come back to see what's changed. New exhibits are installed every semester, and our newest on the U of I supercomputing legacy will be on display starting on May 8th. Now that I've covered some of the organization's most enduring programs and services, I'll talk about the leaders who helped to make them successful. After several decades of being overseen by alumni volunteers, as well as part-time employees, such as the magazine editors and secretaries I mentioned earlier, Frank Scott and Carl Stevens, in the early 1940s, the Alumni Association became a fully professionalized organization with full-time administrators. The first of these was Charles Chili Bowen, who became executive director of the Alumni Association in 1942, a year of significant change for the organization. That was the year the Alumni Board decided to create its executive committee and to professionalize the Alumni Association staff with full-time paid employees. They recognized that as the university changed and grew, the Alumni Association must change and grow with it, and they needed a full-time staff to do that. Bowen, who had previously served as the U of I Athletic Association's business manager, was known as, quote, a genial man with good, sound business judgment, unquote. During his first year at the Alumni Association, he more than tripled its membership, and throughout the remainder of World War II, he corresponded with so many Illini who were in the service that the association received more than 4,000 letters in a single month. But Bowen didn't just write letters. He also made the Alumni Association an essential part of the university's administration. One of the association's most historically important responsibilities began during Bowen's tenure. This was at a time when the university's Board of Trustees was elected on the statewide ballot, like many other political offices. It was the association's responsibility to select both the Democratic and Republican candidates that would be suggested to the party's nominating committees, and most of the time the parties adopted those suggestions. The association continued this practice until 1996, when state law was changed to allow the governor to appoint the trustees. So it's fair to say that over the last half of the 20th century, the Alumni Association had a major impact on the administration of the university. Upon Bowen's retirement in 1960, University President David Dodds Henry called him, quote, a pioneer in the evaluation of alumni work and its organization and advancement in the public universities of the country, unquote. Bowen's successor was Gene Vance, a campus legend who had been one of the stars of the U of I's famous basketball team from the 1940s, known as the Whiz Kids. During Vance's tenure, the Alumni Association began to serve the U of I's new Chicago Circle campus, which would later become UIC. And it also began to computerize its alumni records. Perhaps the most significant achievement under Vance's leadership came in 1962, when the Alumni Association suggested, funded, and organized the relocation of the Alma Mater statue from its original location behind what is now called Follinger Auditorium to its current place of prominence in front of Alkel Hall. At the time, the decision was very unpopular, with the Daily Illini calling it, quote, in the worst possible taste, unquote, and saying that it debased the statue as an advertisement for the university. But more than 60 years later, it's hard to imagine a more appropriate place for it. Vance left the Alumni Association in 1967 to become the university's athletic director, following a so called slush fund scandal that led to the firing of the previous athletic director and several coaches. Fortunately, Vance had built a fantastic staff around him, and two of his staffers would go on to lead the Alumni Association for the next 31 years. The first of these was Jim Vermette. Jim graduated from the university in 1960 and joined the Alumni Association staff a few months later as a field director. He succeeded Gene Vance as executive director in 1967, and by the time he left in 1983, Jim had turned the UIAA into the nation's best alumni association, according to the Council for Advancement and Support of Education. During his tenure, it also became the country's largest dues-paying alumni organization, known for its wide-ranging and fun programming that brought alumni together. One of Jim's most popular ideas was to send the Medicare 7, 8, or 9 jazz band around the country to play for alumni groups. Headed by the iconic Student Affairs Dean and later Alumni Association employee Dan Perino, Medicare 7, 8, or 9 was a huge draw at alumni events from the late 1960s to the early 2000s, and often featured Vermette's wife Dina on vocals. And that photo on the right there is from one of their last performances for the Alumni Association during homecoming week. Another highlight of Jim's tenure was an annual event known as the Alumni Family Camp, a week-long gathering at Allerton Park outside Monticello that featured sports, arts and crafts, faculty lectures, dances, hiking, and many other forms of relaxation. It lasted from the early 70s into the 90s. Jim also created the long-running Alumni Day at the Illini Union, which was a collaboration between the Union and the Alumni Association that started in 1972 as an open house that invited alumni to visit the Union, tour the Alumni Association's offices there, and enjoy a dinner, performances, and faculty talks, as well as free bowling and billiards in the basement. Under Jim's leadership, the Alumni Association also increased its programming and services in the Chicago area, both for Illinois and UIC graduates, and created its Career Center in Chicago. Other, other highlights from Jim's tenure include the work of future executive director Lou Lier, who created a network of constituent alumni associations affiliated with specific U of I colleges and departments. These constituent groups led to a notable increase in the association's collaboration with campus units, and for many years, the Alumni Association administered these groups. Today, one legacy of Lou's work is that each of the university's colleges and many departments have alumni relations professionals on staff who sponsor events, provide career advice, publish magazines, and offer a variety of other programs and services to their alumni. Lou also created a popular annual event during the Vermette years called Women's Day that ran for more than 2 decades. Women's Day featured talks on such wide ranging topics as the politics of the Middle East, the creative process, and women in aerospace engineering. Here we see Lou with the U of I English professor Nina Baim, who served as a speaker for the event on several occasions. And that brings us to Lou's tenure as executive director. Lou joined the Alumni Association staff in 1966 as associate director and served as the executive director from 1983 to 1998. During his tenure, he continued many of the very successful programs he had created and perfected in the 60s and 70s, and continued Vermette's work by even further expanding the membership base. Not only that, but Lou dramatically increased the programs and services that were offered to alumni in Chicago, placed a new emphasis on class reunions, career services, alumni clubs, and the travel program, and spearheaded the transformation of the alumni publication from a newspaper into a magazine. Lou also became legendary for shuttling thousands of alumni to Illinois sporting events. In fact, only a couple months into Lou's tenure, the football team made the Rose Bowl, and he led more than 4,500 alumni and supporters to Pasadena for the game, giving each person a seat cushion like the one shown on the right, and treating them to a grand reception where U of I President Stan Eikenberry and the Medicare 7, 8, or 9 band got the crowd ready for the game. Under Lou's leadership, the Alumni Association also expanded its service to 3 U of I campuses after Sangamon State University became the University of Illinois Springfield in 1995. For the next quarter century, the UIAA would publish an alumni magazine for each campus and provide a host of campus-specific programs. Perhaps Lou's final major program was a year-long celebration of the Alumni Association's 125th anniversary, which it recognized during the 1997-98 school year. As part of the celebration, the organization adopted a new logo. Originally designed in 1888 by the bewhiskered architecture professor and engineering dean Nathan Ricker, who's shown there on the right. The symbol represented the association for 2 decades, but it has an even longer history around the Illinois campus, showing up everywhere from the front of Alma Mater's gown to this beautiful mosaic in Engineering Hall and the doorknobs of many of our older buildings. In 2017, Lou rejoined the Alumni Association staff on a part-time basis to run our Senior Illini program, a program that was once directed by the great Dan Perino of the Medicare 7, 8, or 9 band. Lou approached the job like he approaches everything, by jumping in with both feet, organizing faculty talks, bus trips, river cruises, and all manner of other exciting activities for retired alumni. To recognize his profound impact on the field of alumni relations, in 2023, the university granted Lou an honorary doctorate. Ever modest, Lou said, "I'm real proud of the people that I hired and worked with," giving credit to the hundreds of colleagues who helped him achieve his goals. And here are the 3 executive directors who ran the Alumni Association from 1960 to 1998: Gene Vance, Jim Vermette, and Lou Lier. When Lauren Taylor arrived at the Alumni Association in 1998, he had enormous shoes to fill, but he was stepping into a different role. Whereas previous leaders of the association were known as executive directors, Lauren would be the president and CEO. Lauren would remain at the Alumni Association for 18 and a half years, and his most significant achievement far and away was the planning and construction of the Alice Campbell Alumni Center, named for Alice Campbell, who received her JD from the U of I in 1943, and also later served on the law faculty. Here's Lauren, just to the right of Alice Campbell, at the building's dedication in 2006. When the building opened, it was the culmination of a 25-year dream for the Alumni Association that Lou Lier had spearheaded since the 1980s. After decades of being headquartered in campus buildings such as University Hall, Alkeld Hall, Engineering Hall, Illini Hall, and for 65 years, the Illini Union, the Alumni Center became the organization's first permanent home and a monument to the university's alumni. I think the Alumni Center serves as a metaphor for what the Alumni Association is and what it has become over the past 150 years. It's a place that serves as the U of I's living room, its homecoming headquarters, and the site of more university banquets, faculty celebrations, and research symposia than we can count. But most of all, it's the place where Illinois alumni come to gather, to reminisce, and to feel connected to their alma mater and to each other. I think our longtime motto, which appears in the stone above the building's fireplaces, says it all: building relationships for life. That's what the organization is meant to do and what it will do long into the future. Another lasting contribution of Lauren's tenure is the Veterans Memorial Project. In 2002, the Alumni Association's Vice President for Membership and Marketing, Joe Rank, led an effort to extend the dedication of Memorial Stadium to honor all Illinois alumni, faculty, and staff who died during military service. Originally, the stadium had been dedicated only to Illini who died in World War I, and their names are inscribed on the famous pillars there. The stadium was rededicated during a 2002 football halftime show, which is shown here, and plaques including the names of all the Illini who died during service after World War I were installed near the pillars, and this is one of those on the right. In the 20 years since the rededication, the Alumni Association has maintained an online database of these fallen Illini, which is available through our website. Other major accomplishments of Lauren's tenure include negotiating the largest alumni credit card contract in the Big Ten's history and building the Illinois Connection program into a vital part of the university's political advocacy, creating a network of thousands of students, alumni, and supporters to communicate with legislators on the university's behalf. But Lauren's tenure was also marked by an inordinate amount of turmoil at the university's campuses, characterized by major budget cuts, a state financial crisis, an admissions scandal at Urbana, and a legion of other hurdles. During his 18 and a half years on the job, Lauren remembers that 24 people served as either university president or chancellor of one of the university's 3 campuses. In 2017, the Alumni Association found a renewed energy when Jen Dillevue became its new president. Jen brought with her decades of experience with leadership positions at Ohio University, Carnegie Mellon, Indiana, and Georgia State, and she was returning to her hometown of Champaign to finish her career where it had started at her alma mater. Jen came to the Alumni Association during a period of financial uncertainty for the state, the university, and the organization, and navigating those difficulties became one of the main challenges of her tenure. Not only that, but she also oversaw a major transition in the association's service focus as it shifted from the entire University of Illinois system to Urbana only. However, during this difficult period, there were plenty of bright spots, including the opening of the Richmond Family Welcome Gallery, a renewed investment in our Illini clubs, a cover-to-cover redesign of Illinois Alumni Magazine, an expansion of our virtual programming, and the launch of digital platforms such as the networking platform Illini Link. Homecoming was undoubtedly Jen's favorite week of the academic year, and one of the greatest successes of her tenure was her leadership of the university's homecoming committee, co-chaired with Jim Hentz of Student Affairs. She approached homecoming week with verve and panache, and during her 6 years at the Alumni Association, made her mark by creating several new homecoming traditions, including an elegant awards gala that honors the newest crop of alumni award winners with style, and the week's new kickoff event, the Homecoming 5K, paired with a fountain dyeing ceremony and pancake breakfast outside the Alice Campbell Alumni Center. Sadly, Jen's tenure at the Alumni Association was cut short last year by her untimely passing from cancer at age 64. In honor of her commitment to the university and her love of its students and alumni, the association established the Jennifer Dillevue Memorial Fund to support the next generation of Illinois graduates. If you're interested in contributing to the fund, you can donate on our website at uiaa.org/Jennifer_Dillevue_memorial_fund. To recognize Jen's passion for the university and her joy in dyeing the fountain orange during homecoming, on May 9th at 3 p.m., the university will dedicate the fountain in her honor. as part of this year's commencement celebration. We hope you'll join us there for the ceremony and for the reception that follows, and that you'll send us some nice weather. Finally, here's a photo of the Alumni Association staff at the first Homecoming Awards Gala in 2019. You see Jen there in the center, and several other friendly faces of folks who are still on staff. And one of those people there in the back row, second person from the left, would go on to become the organization's next leader. This past summer, the Alumni Association started the next chapter in its history when David Bambry succeeded Jen Delavu as president. Under David's tenure thus far, the Alumni Association has expanded its membership benefits, increased its career services programming for alumni, received national awards for its alumni magazine, and increased its virtual and in person events, which have included not only athletics game watches, but also alumni book talks and faculty presentations. Based on the flurry of activity during his first months on the job, we look forward to seeing where David will lead us as the Alumni Association begins its next 150 years. I know I just covered a lot of information in 48 minutes, but I hope I've provided you with a good overview of the Alumni Association's first 150 years, and that I captured the important role the organization has played in the university's history. If you ever have any questions about the university's history, or you'd like a tour of the Richmond Family Welcome Gallery, please contact me. But for now, I'd like to thank you again for joining me this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the presentation. If you have a question and you haven't entered it into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, go ahead and do that now, and I'll answer as many questions as we have time for from the Q&A. If I don't get to your question, please email me, and I will respond to you with the answer. One question, this is from Bob Rapp, have the old Illinois Quarterly issues been scanned and stored online? They haven't yet. However, there's a project that's in process with the university archives to digitize the older versions of the alumni magazine and the newspaper before that. I don't have an estimation on when that project will be finished, but it is in the process. We have a complete archive of the newspaper and the alumni magazine at the Alumni Center. If you ever visit and you'd like to browse through it, we have a complete set in our library there. Another question is about where is the alumni building on campus. The Alice Campbell Alumni Center is on Lincoln Avenue between Illinois and Oregon. And if you were on campus in the 70s or 80s or 90s, where the Alumni Center is where California Avenue used to pass right through it. But now California Avenue ends at the Alumni Center on Lincoln. Another question. The exhibit on supercomputers that I mentioned will go on display starting on May 8th, and then will be on display for at least a year. The Welcome Gallery is open. There's a question, when is the Welcome Gallery open for visitors? It's open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And depending on the football and basketball schedule, the Saturday hours are different sometimes, depending on the start time of the game. And here's a question. any alumni programs gearing up for the 2028 Olympic Games in LA? That is a great question, and I can look into that and get back to you. One idea, as I'm thinking about this, I have an exhibit at the Alumni Center about international competition that involves U of I Olympians, and I think that maybe I'll expand that for the Olympics. But I'll see if we're planning on doing anything else also. Okay. Question from Kit Beyer: when did themes begin for homecoming? Wow. I don't know the exact year on that, Kit, but they began early. Um, and the themes for homecoming, even in the early years, were often on the homecoming pins. We have uh, some of those on display in the welcome gallery, uh, and I rotate those out over time. Where did this go? I rotate those homecoming pins out over time so that you can see new ones. Um, but you can also find a lot of the more popular ones just through a Google search if you're interested in seeing what some of those early homecoming themes were on the pins. And then there was a second part of your question. What is the theme for this year? It hasn't been announced yet, uh, but that is coming soon. Okay. Here's a question that says, "What surprised you the most when you were researching the history of the organization?" Hmm. The thing that I found most interesting was that throughout the Alumni Association's history, there there were these sort of uh, there were these through lines as far as the types of programs and services that we were offering um, from decade to decade, and the ways that we were using the existing technology or emerging technologies to offer them. And I'm talking about things like um, the the way that the alumni records program changed over time as computerization came in, um, as well as talks like this one. I mean, once upon a time, I would have given this in person, and that would have been the only option. Um, for a long time, we were sending faculty speakers all over the country to talk to alumni groups because that was the only way to do it. And now we're able to reach a much wider audience by doing a mix of in-person things and virtual things like this. Um, so yeah, that was the most interesting thing that I found is that the ways in which we were trying to create programs and services for alumni shared a lot of commonalities over the last 150 years. It's just we were doing it in different ways depending on um, technologies that were available for us to execute them. Okay. So we've got about 3 minutes left on the clock. If anyone else has a question, I think we probably have time for me to answer one more, and I'll give it just a minute here. Is the fountain outside the Alice Campbell Alumni Center died other than homecoming week? No, it's not. That's the only week of the year that we do anything to the fountain, and that initially came about after much asking, and I wouldn't say begging, but we really wanted to do it, and eventually the university agreed, and they were as happy with it as we were, and so now it's become an annual tradition. But no, just during homecoming week is the only time it's ever died. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. And if you have any questions about the Alumni Association, uh, please visit our website. You can also reach out directly to our staff for more information. If you have any questions about university history or the history of the Alumni Association, please contact me directly. And also, please visit the Alice Campbell Alumni Center, both to see the Richmond Family Welcome Gallery, but also just to say hello. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.